Welcome back. It's the Balance Breakdown. We're here. We're going to break down some fights for you. Harry Powell is with me. As always, we're going to take a look at UFC Vegas 85. This past weekend, the card went down in the UFC APEX. And I had to laugh, Harry, because we were just going through the severe setup last week, calling it UFC Vegas 87. We were 2 events ahead of ourselves. But these things happen in MMA sometimes. Nobody noticed it, hopefully. And who cares if anybody did any which way. UFC Vegas 85 is the card that we're going to talk about. Nasruddin Imavov, Roman Dolidze in the main event went to battle. We had a co-main event between Renato Moicano and Drew Dober to talk about, and a couple of other interesting fights and storylines that we'll get into over the next hour or so. Mr. Powell, how are we doing? How are we doing today, sir?
Grand now. Thanks very much. A mixed bag of a card, I think.
Yeah.
It was some great fights, some great performances, and we'll obviously get into those. But over and above, it felt like a little bit of a drag. And I was wondering, actually, to steal a Sean Sheehan segment, do we want to give these cards maybe sometimes a bit of a grading? Like on the SevereMMA big podcast, he used to, and still sometimes does, gives like a from 0 to 10 grading, and he gives a very specific, very nuanced, very educated grading. And if I were to don my Sir Sheehan hat of gradings, I think I would give this one like a 5.3, where there's not. It's not bad. It's certainly above the scale of 50%, but it's not too much above the scale,
Yeah, I would not have been going above a 6 point, maybe 2 or 3 myself. That would be me giving I think what you nailed it. What was it? 5.8?
5.3.
5.3. Okay, we didn't quite get 5.8, but 5.3 is fair. It is fair. I think a big part of these cards, Harry, and it kind of gives us a perfect segue into the main event, is how good a main event is, right? And a main event could be good on paper, but we've got to look at it. It's got to deliver when we're watching it as well. And I don't think this one delivered the way that we were hoping it would deliver. And we can kind of get into the reasons why over the next couple of minutes or so. Do you think that that was a big factor? And is that in general a big factor on how successful these kind of cards are? Because we're kind of at a stage right now where we're at this tiered system, really, in the UFC. And credit to Spencer, he has been saying this as well, and we've been giving out about it, but he has been saying we're getting our pay-per-view cards, we're getting our fight night cards in front of a crowd, and we're getting our UFC APEX cards as well, which are cards similar to what we had on Saturday night and what we'll have next Saturday night as well, where the quality, the jeopardy, the intrigue isn't quite what it used to be maybe for the old Apex cards, but that's because they couldn't go anywhere else. But the Apex cards are here to stay, at least for this year anyway. We've got a good schedule amount of Apex cards, and I think I'm at a stage with these Apex cards where it's more of an acceptance, but we also have to be honest with our assessments of it as well. I'm not going to get up in arms about these kind of cards. They're here now. They're kind of a fixture in the UFC schedule, but how good or bad a card is, it really boils down to me how good your co-main and your main event is. I only mentioned the main in the past, and both of these didn't really deliver, and that's why I think you've got to your score of 5.3 as a rating, and I like that. I think we should keep it. We'll steal that idea and we'll keep it running. Do you agree with that assessment, Harry?
Sort of, right? Like, I think with these Apex cards, because there's such a small crowd, momentum is also a massive thing, right? It's a really, really big thing. Now, momentum is a big thing in an arena show, but when it comes to an arena show, there's slightly different variables to momentum, in that some people come in for certain fights and then they may leave for some fights, and they come in for certain fights and they're away, and they might be at the bar and they might be here, there, and everywhere. Some fighters might draw a big crowd from a local gym, and then for whatever reason, they may not stick around for all of the fights, or they come back for the main or the co-main. Lots of people come just in for the main card. Some people come just in for the co-main and main event. So like, it's such an odd trickle when it comes to those arena shows. But momentum is still such a vastly important thing. And I think in these Apex cards, because the crowd is so small, if you can engage the crowd early with some really, really fantastic performances or storylines or whatever it is, then as the card builds, the sort of the energy and the atmosphere begins to build as well. Now, when we're talking about the specifics of this main and co-main, on paper, it was going to be a really interesting grappling battle. We got a grappling battle, just not an interesting one. And then equally in the co-main, I think we all expected Moicano to be able to get Drew Dober down, and he did do, right, successfully in all 3 rounds. But I suspected personally that if he did get Drew Dober down, that there would be far more of a dominant submission or a potent submission threat. And there wasn't. Now, again, when we get to that fight, we'll talk about the specifics of why that was. But I agree, just to sort of skirt around some of the other points that you made, I agree entirely that acceptance is a big part of these Apex cards. I think a grading system, whilst not being explicit from the UFC's marketing teams, it is very obvious what's going on here, right? There's Apex shows, then there's small arena shows, and then there's the massive pay-per-view shows, right? And even there's like B-tier pay-per-views where we're not going UFC 300, we're not going International Fight Week, we're not sending it, as the children would say. We are just, it's a pay-per-view, it's a really good card, but it's not your absolute balls to the wall. We're throwing absolutely everything at this card. And so I think it's important, as you say, that we accept these. And I think that we measure and meet our expectations of what we can expect to come out of those cards when it comes to knowing where we are. Now, it would be nice, don't get me wrong, if the UFC was a little bit more explicit in that sort of grading system, but it's really not in their interests to do so, because you're then saying to your customer, well, not all of our cards are amazing. And so if I was you, I'd just tune into these fucking really good ones, Instead, I'd leave these ones. These are all garbage and the fighters are crap. But that's not the truth, right? We know that that's not the truth. And so it's important for them to market each and every one sort of the same. But
yeah. No, very good points. And I think, for this card in particular, it stands that UFC president Dana White chose to go to a boxing event rather than attend this one. And I think that tells a story in its own right. Look, we mentioned Nasruddin Imavov. We have mentioned Roman Dolidze. They did go to battle in the main event. A fight that drew a little bit of excitement in round 1 and then just slowly but surely fizzled out. On the big podcast, I kind of shared my main opinions on what I thought happened in this fight. First big surprise to me was the news that Nasruddin Imavov is no longer with the MMA Factory. What do you think about that?
So I was actually going to bring this up to you because, as you know, I don't really do a lot of watching of Fight Week. I don't watch comms. I don't watch pre-fight press conferences or anything like that. I just watch the fights. And when I noticed there were a couple of moments in the fight, and I was like, those don't look like teammates from the MMA Factory. That doesn't look like Cyril Gagné. That doesn't look like I've forgotten your man's name that runs the MMA Factory. What's his name?
Fernand Lopez.
Fernand Lopez, thank you. Like, that doesn't look like him. Now, sometimes if Fernand has got something on or whatever it is, they can sub people out and bring in and whatever. But when then there was a moment in the corner and I was just watching a little bit of the corner and I was like, no, that's not the same set of people, is it? Now, I am interested to see how this goes from a long-term perspective. And I think there are certainly some things that Nasruddin Imavov did really, really well that we haven't seen before, or we haven't seen as much in other fights, specifically the jab, the check left hook, some of the inside movement and inside work. But then there are also some things still hanging on from the MMA Factory days. MMA Factory?
Yeah, MMA Factory is correct. Yeah. I kind of said the same on the big podcast myself. In terms of my assessment, obviously I've been fairly outspoken and what I think about the MMA Factory, and I used the assessment of the growth that Francis Ngannou kind of made after moving from there to Extreme Couture. I think you're dead right in saying what we've seen flashes of that from Nasruddin Imavov, but at the same time, we've seen him pick up a couple of maybe the bad habits that he did pick up at the MMA Factory. Look at it, he picked up a lot of good habits there as well. I don't want to completely shit all over MMA Factory, but I do think that as a gym has its limitations for fighters. And, you know, I think the long run, I don't want to go and fully assess Imavov's, move after one fight. I think, like you said, it will be more over a couple of fights and seeing him making those leaps and bounds. But what did you see? I would say that you were well impressed in round one with what we had going on. We had Roman Dolidze out there doing exactly what we thought he was going to do in round one, Harry, and that was kick the calf leg kick the calf kick. I don't know, kick the calf leg. What the fuck am I saying? Of Nasruddin Imavov with that wide stance, with that wide base. And he didn't like it early days, but he responded quite well. He hurt Roman Dolidze, and, you know, Dolidze was on skates at the end of that round. And I don't think he truly recovered after round one. I'm curious to hear what you think about the way the fight played out, and we can start with round one, obviously.
Yeah, so I completely agree with that assessment that Imavov, we said, right, if Imavov gets into his rhythm, specifically his grappling rhythms and these sorts of things, I think it was going to be tough for Dolidze. And I actually think we saw that as the fight progressed, where Dolidze was pulling guard, he was rolling for leg locks, these sorts of things, which, you know, as we've said ad nauseum now, just doesn't exist in high level mixed martial arts anymore. And so I was very impressed early days with both guys, frankly, with Dolidze's ability to kick the calf leg, but secondarily with Imavov's ability to land very crisp jabs, really nice sniper right hands. Now, he didn't check any of those kicks in that first round, and they were definitely stinging him, and he definitely didn't like it. But he believed and found a way to get through that center line of Dolidze. And when he did hurt him, he hurt him really, really badly, right? The right hand really hurt him, but the knee absolutely rung the bell. And look, I didn't score it a 10-8 round. I don't have a huge problem with it being scored a 10-8 round, but I did not score it a 10-8 round. I thought the calf kicks were damaging. Okay, the more impactful shots were the shots to the head by Nasruddin Imavov, the jabs, the whatever. But there wasn't an overarching criteria met of all 3Ds for me. There was damage, sure. There was dominance, sure. I don't think there was duration, though, for me specifically.
Well, you're completely fair in saying that. I did score it at 10-8, and
Okay.
I kind of explained it on the big podcast in terms of going back to Saldamado's card of the 10-8, which, you know, was a kinder 10-8 than we would have normally seen. And I think, you know, the way Sean spoke about that, he spoke about that very well, is that, you know, Salah's trying to set the trend here. Being at that California State Athletic Commission meeting, certain comments are said is in terms of how you score certain fights and how close the fight was being finished and how badly hurt Dolidze was at the end of that fight, at the end of that round, where he was wobbling over to the corner, was just enough for me to score that a 10-8. But you're really teetering on the edge of a 10-8 and a 10-9 there, and I'm not going to argue against it not being scored a 10-8 at all. And yeah, it's just so hard in those situations to kind of get a grip. And at the time I went back and looked at it. I scored it to 10-8 based off of maybe a little bit more leniency in what we want to see in 10-8. It's not the Dana White rule of 10-8s where someone has to almost get decapitated. But that being said, look at round one, a strong round for Imavov. He didn't really push on though, Harry. I went and said that Dolidze kind of got hurt. I feel that he was in zombie mode, Dolidze was, where he was initiating that clinch and just kind of looking to recover and survive in round two. And I felt that Imavov, he kind of accepted that position in the clinch too much in round two, and almost throughout the fight really accepted that position, a position where he was able to kind of land knees and land shots, but didn't really fire off. I'm just curious to hear what you think about that.
So I think that what we saw in sort of the rest of the rounds really was Dolidze hanging on for dear life, and Imavov worried about gassing. That's what I think we saw, right? I think we saw that Imavov realized he had 20 minutes left of fighting after he expended a little bit of energy, a little bit of the gas tank, just turned the knob just a few touches and let a little bit of that gas out, and then realized, okay, he might not just go away, or it might take me quite a while to get to him. And when I do get to him, I need to make sure that I am available to actually try and finish him, right? Gassing has been a problem for Imavov before, and we have seen it. And so I think in those specific clinch exchanges, he realized that he wasn't in drastic amounts of danger from Dolidze's striking. And he just had to be aware that if he did roll for leg locks, if he did pull, if he did this, then we had to be on our P's and Q's from a grappling perspective. But Imavov was just as happy to take the rest periods, knowing that he was landing the elbows on the clinch breaks. He was landing some knees. He was landing the crisper shots on the feet. And I think he kind of knew that Dolidze was still struggling to recover from that initial onslaught at the end of the first round. Now, I half can't blame him, right? Because at the end of the day, you're there to win.
Mm-hmm.
And in that middleweight division, getting a win over somebody like Roman Dolidze, regardless of whether, people think it was a fight of the year or not, that means something. And it will mean something for the future of his next couple of fights. But Imavov has to realize that getting a win over Roman Dolidze means something. And so you're not going to get an easy fight in your next one.
100%.
And you may still be looking at fight night main event or an Apex main event, or you might be looking at a primetime slot where you're going to need to really, really make use of that 3 rounds, if it is 3 rounds, or 5 rounds, if it is 5 rounds. And so whilst the grappling exchanges we saw, Imavov was relatively in control of all of them. Lots of back body lock work, some nice takedown stuff. He defended the leg locks well. When he was on top, he was landing okay. He was doing a good job of negating any of the sort of clinch exchanges that Dolidze was looking for. And then when they were on the feet, Dolidze by sort of the end of the fourth was just swinging lunch boxes and not really thinking about what he was throwing. He was really telegraphing spins, and Imavov was in control of all of those exchanges. There is a part of me that says, well, okay, at 27 years old, we're expecting you to kick on. It would have been really nice in those last 10 minutes for you to lay the hammer down a little bit, and just really try and go for that finish. I know, I understand, like I said at the top of this, he has to win.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. But
I think it's fair to kind of criticize a little bit, but also understand at the same time why it didn't happen. I think you kind of explained it very, very well. For Roman Dolidze, look, you don't want to start a fight the way he started and get hurt that badly. I feel that we saw a body and a shell in there for the rest of the fight. We didn't really see a guy that's probably operating at full capacity when it comes to, being able to adjust his game plan, think logistically of what he needs to do to win this fight. Like you said, he abandoned the jab, he abandoned the calf kick after getting hurt. It seemed to be just wanting to kind of survive a little bit. And, that does happen sometimes. It's a scary thing. I would imagine, I'd be fairly confident that there's a large section of that fight that Roman Dolidze does not remember at all after being hurt. It's crazy how these guys can kind of get themselves into that state of mind, or that, natural kind of flow that you have when you are hurt. It's kind of strange to explain if you haven't experienced it. But back to the drawing board for Roman Dolidze. For Nasruddin Imavov, we did talk about what's next. Is it another 5-round fight for you? Is it another 3-round fight for you? Where would you like to see him go next in the middleweight division?
It has to be 5 rounds for me. It has to be 5 rounds. And it has to be 5 rounds because I want to see him tested in a similar fashion, not necessarily technically or whatever, because I think it feels to me, at least from the positive things that we saw from just spending a couple of months at the new gym, there are new wrinkles being added to his game. And so from a technical perspective, I trust the process. I need to see him in a 5-round fight and question, will he put the foot on the gas? Will he trust the gas tank? Who does he fight? Well, I kind of am interested in the winner of Jack Hermansson, in the Jack Hermansson fight.
Mm.
Caio Borralho and Paul Craig, they're fighting a light heavyweight, aren't they?
I think so. I'll check that real quick.
Yeah, I think they are. But the Jack Hermansson winner is sort of where I'm leaning right now.
Yeah, I like that because it's on a good time scale as well. Obviously, that's the fight that's coming up this weekend at the UFC APEX. Maybe the UFC are thinking about that as well. The confirmed fight is at middleweight for Paul Craig is at middleweight against Caio Borralho. So, you know, that's another option there as well for him. But I do you know what? I like the Hermansson, I like the Pyfer fight. And I think it'd be, if, you know, we'll talk about the Pyfer fight in the setup, but if Pyfer did get a win, I think it's the perfect step up for him in the middleweight division as well. For Dolidze, it's just back to the drawing board, really, Harry. He's been out of the octagon for a year. We'll be disappointed in this one, but I'm sure he'll dust himself off. I'm sure we'll see him again a couple of times this year, but he's in a difficult position now where he's kind of failed at this kind of level of fight. Not once, but maybe once or twice before. Obviously with Marvin Vettori, who picked up a decision win. So we may have seen his level within. Is it fair to say that about Roman Dolidze?
I'd say so, yeah. I think, look, the problem with Roman Dolidze is that he has made a game off clubbing people really, really, really hard, having some wicked kicks, and then jiu-jitsu. Not wrestling, not grappling, jiu-jitsu. And at the elite levels, the clubbing people really, really hard is very difficult to get to without sort of some good technical nuance and some footwork and some head movement and some setups. Really, really good kicks. What we saw in round one against Nasruddin Imavov. They land. And when they land, they cause people significant problems. But when you strip those away and you strip the head movement, you strip everything else away, what have you got? You've got jiu-jitsu, lads. And it just doesn't work.
Careful now, or you won't be let back into the gym.
I mean, but it's true though, thankfully.
Oh, you're right. You know, it doesn't. Not at the highest level of mixed martial arts. It's
rolling for knee bars, looking for outside heel hooks. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. So we'll see what's next for Roman Dolidze. We shall move on to the co-main event, Harry. That was Renato Moicano and Drew Dober. And I want to apologize to all mixed martial arts fans here because I put out the tweet of death before this one. I put out the tweet of death saying that this one was going to be insane and I would be very surprised if it got past round one. Well, it wasn't really that exciting. It got past round one. It actually went all 3 rounds with Renato Moicano winning the unanimous decision. And like I said in the big podcast, I think Drew Dober is going to have nightmares about that lateral drop attempt in round 3. We'll get there eventually, but talk to me about the story of this fight in your eyes, Harry. How you seen it and the game plans both of these guys brought.
I think Drew Dober is going to kick himself so much. Drew Dober, I'll say it, he should have won this fight.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely should have won this fight because the rounds went exactly the same all 3 times. The first round, Dober comes out, lands a monster right hand on Moicano, wobbles him, Moicano falls into the clinch, takes him down. And then when he takes him down, he just holds him there for the full 4 and a bit minutes it was. Lands a bit of damage, does a bit of passing, grand, no problem. Second round, there's a bit more of a scramble. Dober manages to get back up to his feet, hits a beautiful lateral drop, actually hits one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then puts Moicano in close guard for the rest of the round, busts him up on that right eye, does some real work on that right eye. And then round 3, falls in love with the lateral drop, realizes he's taken down a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and wants to do it again, fails, and then just gets mauled on the ground. Mauled. Absolutely mauled. And Moicano ends the round in mount, just battering him. And man, in all 3 rounds, Dober lands and hurts Moicano. In all 3 rounds. But he just, because of the way he strikes and because of the way he relies on both his technique, but really, really values his athleticism in his striking, it's impossible for him to pull back. When he throws his entire being into every single shot. And so what we saw in each of those exchanges when he eventually got taken down was Moicano gets clipped, hurt, but it's already in the clinch. He's already in grappling range. Moicano didn't need to do anything other than basically just fall over, right? And he found his way to get Drew Dober down to the ground. Drew Dober, however, if he had just got an ability to cut an angle and land a shot on Moicano, he'd have finished him. But, oh man, watching it, I almost felt sorry for Drew Dober because he was doing everything right other than just stuffing a takedown, you know?
I think it was a head and hands moment for Harry Powell when he was watching that sequence of events, because he was. My issue is that Drew Dober was actually doing quite well in the striking realm at the start of round 3, and he was landing some big shots, and he actually got kind of faltered by his own success in round 2, where he did land that lateral drop and he went back to it again. But obviously Moicano was more privy to it this time and didn't accept it. And it was, he ended up on bottom. It was a disaster. And small little errors like that, Harry, are going to cost you big time. Look, a little bit of criticism maybe towards Moicano and fighting the way he did. Look, I don't really like it, but you have to respect it, because I need to understand you're in there with a guy like Drew Dober who is throwing absolute rockets at your head. So you got to do what you got to do. Do you think Moicano did enough when he got the fight down? Would you like it? A lot, the ref was coming in a lot. He didn't really look to be advancing position. He didn't look to be kind of looking to posture up and land his shots as well. And you know, it wasn't really that great to look at. It wasn't really that exciting. And, you know, it says a lot when your post-fight interview is more exciting than the actual fight, to be honest, doesn't it?
Moicano realized that he had to not allow Drew Dober back to his feet, because Dober was quicker, he was stronger, and he was landing far more impactful strikes. Because when they were landing, Moicano's head was wobbling every single time. And so Moicano realized he had to weather the storm, find a way to get him down, and do enough to keep him down. Priority one, numero uno, A+++, do not let him back up. Secondarily, land enough damage to A, win the round, and B, ensure that the referee doesn't stand you up, right? And that's exactly what he did. At the end of the day, Moicano fought smartly, and he fought well, given the circumstances he found himself in. I imagine the game plan going in was not to take big shots and then find a way to the takedown and ride the rounds out. I am sure going in, it was to hurt Drew Dober, find a submission, find a lockout, whatever it is that they were planning on. But it was not to get clipped 3 times in 3 rounds, find a way to the ground and keep him there, right? At the end of the day, though, and this is what we kind of said with Imavov and Dolidze, when you're in there and you find yourself that your game plan's gone all the way out the fucking window and you've been clobbered by a dude that's got concrete in his hands, if you can take him down and hold him down, that's exactly what you fucking do.
Absolutely. It's like I give out about it time and time again, but it's better to win ugly than to not win, to be honest. So that's what Moicano did, and fair play to him. Who do you want to see him in there next with?
Paddy Pimblett.
Don't mind it at all. They've been doing a lot of chirping. And I don't hate that fight at all. I think it's a good fight. Both of them will be coming in chatting that shit, and should make it exciting. If Moicano goes out and performs like he performed last night, I'd give Paddy a squeak in that fight, but Paddy would have to be at his absolute best. But I don't know. I think Moicano fights a different fight against Paddy Pimblett, and I think where Paddy is at right now, there's not going to be too many easy tests for him at the lightweight division. We've talked about that time and time again. For Drew Dober, man, we just stick him in good fights, stick him in exciting fights. He wants to be the new Cowboy Cerrone. Just let him bang, bro. Put him in there with a striker next. That's what I say.
Well, right. I mean, I think this was kind of my thing. Like this from the Drew Dober side, right? When he was saying to us previously, I'm only going to take fights that are super exciting. I'm only going to take fights that are pleasing to the fans. I'm only going to do this. Then why did you fight a grappler? Do you know what I mean? Like, I totally understand the sentiment, and there's obviously an element with Drew Dober that if you string a couple of wins together, you might get a big name. The UFC really like the fact that he will go in there and put it all on the line, and so if they can market him a little bit as like, oh, 3-fight win streak or 4-fight win streak or whatever it is, they'll chuck you in with a solid name, whoever that name is. Do you know what I mean? Like, that will happen for sure. But yeah, let's see him against a striker next. I don't care who it is. Just give me anyone.
Yep, 100%. I'm down with it. I'm also down with Randy Brown, who got the win over Muslim Salikov. And Harry, we've been talking about Randy Brown, and we've seen the best of Randy Brown, and we've seen the worst of Randy Brown. But we've seen the best of Randy Brown on Saturday night against Muslim Salikov, because used his size, his range. Got his reads off. It looked like they put together a fantastic game plan, and it all came to a head around 3 minutes into round one, where he landed a beautiful right straight. A shot that I almost had to kind of rewind back and look again, because I didn't even see it the first time. I was like, what has he gotten with there? I didn't see what it was at all. Beautiful shot. And we're downtown Randy Brown. I know his nickname is Rude Boy, but he should change it to Downtown Randy Brown. He got the job done, Harry. You're nodding with approval, with a smile on your face there. I know you love this one.
You and I talked off air about being able to take our fan hats off and our media hats on, right? If we did the Team O'Neill and Team Powell, Randy Brown is probably on Team Powell. I've talked so much about Randy fucking Brown over his UFC career because I just have a penchant and a soft spot for a fighter who is about 70 feet tall with a range of about 300 meters arm span and can fight with it. And when Randy Brown is on, it's just gorgeous to watch a long fighter fight like that. It's one of the reasons why I love Sean Woodson, is the same thing. He's long and he can fight long. And then when you get a performance, firstly, my first note is, fuck me, Randy Brown looks huge in there in comparison to Muslim Salikov. It looked like a welterweight fighting a lightweight. That's what it looked like. He was absolutely fucking gargantuan, but it had everything, right? Randy Brown would rush Salikov when he was looking to spin and kill that. He would come all the way out when he was looking to spin and kill that. He would find angles. He was switching stances. He was styling on him with the footwork. He was brushing away shots as they came past his shoulder line and giving it the old look by. He was giving it everything. It was just the whole piece. And when he landed that 1-1-2, Jesus Christ. Like Leon Edwards he sort of coined that phrase, headshot dead.
Mm.
That was that.
100%. And he was calling to his corner as well. His corner was they had noticed something in Salikov's game. It's obviously something that the game planned for. And like I said with Shawnee on the big podcast, it was like, sometimes you just need to do the simple things effectively, and it's enough to get the job done, especially against a guy like Salikov, who is going to throw these wild spinning attacks and everything like that. And that's why he just stood into those jabs and he stood into those 1-2s, and that was picture perfect. He looked like he was having fun in there. And we go back to his last loss. That was against Jack Della Maddalena, where he fought a lot on the back foot, maybe tentatively so, and had too much respect for Jack Della Maddalena. But we need to see Randy Brown fighting on the front foot and continue to fight on the front foot. Because I agree with you. When you see a guy with that level of range, that height, that length, and him using it as effectively as he can, it's a sight to behold. It's beautiful to watch. And I thought that knockout was absolutely beautiful as well. For Downtown, for anything else to add about this?
Nah, just that it was beautiful. Really, really beautiful.
And Downtown Randy Brown, who do you want to see him next with?
I got two options for you. The first one is, do we want to give him a bit of a name? And if we do, what about Sean Brady? He's without a fight.
Oh, yes, I love that one. I think send him up there. Like, to go out there, look, at Muslim Salikov is on the twilight end of his career, but he's not an easy guy to get out of there. Lots of people have tried. I think he's only been finished like twice in his career so far. He's a tricky customer. I think you go away and you put away a guy like Muslim Salikov in round one, you deserve a big name. Randy Brown, 33 years of age right now, Harry. Time is not on his side. He needs to get a move on. And this is his moment. He said, he said he's promised to himself that he wants to go on this last run. He seems to be ticking off all the boxes. He seems to be in a good headspace. And it's now or never, in my opinion, for Randy Brown. Sean Brady being the first. What do you have next?
The other option is Michael Morales. Because Michael Morales, he needs a name.
Yeah.
And they both fight long. They're both quick. They're both athletic. And Randy Brown, I'm going to steal Mr. Spencer Kite's coinage here. He said Randy Brown is Neil Magny light. Right? Like the second coming of Neil Magny. Well, Michael Morales is due a Neil Magny type fight. Right? And so if you don't want to, right? If Randy Brown sits in that room and he says, look, I'm 6-1 in my last 7, and my only loss in the last one was Jack Della Maddalena. These things fucking happen in MMA. The only loss after that is the Bilal Muhammad's of the world. And, these sorts of fighters, these things happen. Yeah. Maybe you're not top 5 in the world. Fine. Not many are. But if you want to say, okay, give me a Sean Brady. Let me see if I can be a top 10. Let me see if I can be a top 8. Fine. If you want to try and build Michael Morales and you want to do the Randy Brown, that one, I have no problem with either. But I like the Sean Brady fight. I
like the Sean Brady fight a little bit better because I think, with Randy Brown, he's done enough to kind of get that name, get a last crack at the top 10 as well. But I also like that Michael Morales fight. And I think whether it happens next, whether it doesn't happen, it could very well be a fight that we do see in the coming years as well with Morales' trajectory up through the 170-pound division. But look, a great win for Randy Brown. And we should move on to the women's flyweight division. Natalia Silva took out Viviane Araujo by unanimous decision. She didn't really take her out, but she landed lots of impactful strikes, used a beautiful jab in this one, Harry, in my opinion, and got on her skates. It was, that's her style. I saw maybe a couple of people say, maybe she could have done a bit more. But, if we've been watching Natalia Silva coming up the ranks, and this is the way she fights. She's an outside fighter. She uses lateral movement, moves from side to side, very difficult to read, very difficult to pin and corner. And you know what she showcased in this fight, where I feel that she's leveled up in previous fights, was that fucking jab, man. That jab was serious, and it was the winning of this fight for her, in my opinion. She got it off lovely. It set up other strikes as well. And Viviane Araujo, she was trying to close the distance. She was trying to clinch, and Natalia Silva did very well to keep her off and kind of dictate the fight and dictate where she wanted the fight to take place. And that was on the feet at a distance where she could come in and come out with that jab and maybe that right hand. And she threw up that head kick once or twice as well. I think a good performance. Maybe I was going to say a great performance. Maybe that's too much. I think a really good performance against the step up in competition for Natalia Silva. We're going to need to see a little bit more. Curious to hear what you think of the performance overall.
I don't think it was too nice for you to say it was a great performance. I think it was a great performance. I think Viviane Araujo is a really good fighter, a very tricky fighter, hits really, really hard, has really, really nice footwork, and can grapple a little bit. And I was so impressed with Silva's. She offers... Just let me land, okay? I'm going to go off, but just let me land.
Go for it.
She offers in a very similar way to when Wonderboy Thompson was at the height of his powers and when Conor McGregor was coming up. Not at the height of his powers, but was coming up. There was that really, really difficult problem to deal with, which was you can't get close enough to take them down because their footwork's so clean. When you do try and close that distance, you've either got the dexterity of kicking game or now a really nice jab. She has a really nice fadeaway left hand. She has a really nice ability to angle off and angle out. And so that strange, long sort of stance with a kick that's a jab and some clean, straight punches is really difficult to get to in the first place. And when you do get to her, what she showed in this fight was some really, really nice takedown defense. And equally, when she did get taken down, a really good ability to ride and get immediately back up. And so, okay, it's maybe a little far-fetched to to put her in the same name as those specific fighters, but I'm not talking about specific like skill ceiling. I'm talking about the sort of problems that their game gives other fighters. And Araujo kind of, by the end of sort of midway through the second, just realized I'm just banging a nail that's not going to go in, but I don't really have anything else to try. So I'm just going to keep fucking banging and seeing what I can get to. And Silva did such a good job of skirting on that outside, using the head kick as a deterrent, using the flash leg kicks, throwing that jab, constantly finding herself an exit pocket when Araujo was swinging. And then being like, okay, maybe somebody, this is maybe somebody that's a better example, but like William Gomis, when he's on, is this type of fighter. Skirt around the edge of the cage and just punish you from the outside. Punish you. Taylor Lapalus, again, can do that exact same game. And in that division where the ladies at the now that we're getting to the very top for Natalia Silva, now she's going to find some interesting stylistic matchups with more well-rounded fighters. This is where it starts to get really interesting for her. But Viviane Araujo is a big name to just go and style on like that. A big name.
Absolutely. She didn't really look in too much trouble throughout the fight. I was very impressed. It was like my under the radar fight of the night. I was looking forward to seeing how Natalia would do in the step up in competition, but she plastered flying colors. And I'm very, very excited to see what's next for her. And I'm excited to hear what you think should be next for her, Harry.
So it's difficult at the top of this division, right? Because we've still got the weirdness with Valentina and Grasso. Who knows whether they're going to do a trilogy, what they're going to do, are they going to move on, what's going to happen? Blanchfield and Poirot is booked, ready to go. March 30th, we could do the winner of that or even the loser of that. Because I think the winner of Blanchfield and Poirot should be fighting for a title, right? We should allow Valentina a backstep. Then we've got Caitlin Chikagian versus Macy Barber. It's tough because you don't want to do the Caitlin Chikagian turns into Max Holloway and you push everyone through the Caitlin Chikagian meat grinder. And if they fail that test, well, then, you know, they've got to go all the way back around the carousel. Part of me is saying, just give Valentina Shevchenko Natalia Silva right now and allow Valentina Shevchenko to build back up. But I also would have no problem with the loser of Blanchfield and Poirot. I think that's kind of where I'm at now. Natalia Silva, let's give her the first jump up to that really upper echelon and let's see how she fares. And whatever happens in the fallout of that fight happens and we'll move on from it. But I feel as though for Silva's own progression, it happened with Macy Barber where she took a couple of losses early enough. Now I feel like with Silva, we either need to, this is the first opportunity, right? You get like 3 or 4 when you're her age in that division. Let's see the opportunity to spread your wings a little bit. Let's put you in with the elite of that division and let's see what happens. If you win, amazing. We have someone. We really have someone. Then it is going to be Barber, Blanchfield, Poirot, Grasso, Shevchenko, and Silva all riding high at the top of that division. If she goes up and falls a little bit short, no problem. There's plenty of time. You're on mute.
Amanda Hebas, that's who I'd like to see.
I've got no problem with that either.
Yeah, I'd like to see that next. But yeah, we shall move on. Interesting times for Natalia Silva in the women's 125-pound division. Good, nice breath of fresh air, new talent coming into the top 10 there. So fair play to her. Next fight, Alishkab Hizriev versus Mahmoud Muradov ended after 11 seconds.
Absolute
what was that?
Shambles.
Yeah, very unfortunate. Not too much to discuss on this. We won't really. 11 seconds, eye poke. What can we do? Let these boys in there again. Let's see him crack again. Hopefully no eye pokes next time around. Moving on. Charles Radtke versus Gilbert Urbina. There's going to be a 2-pronged conversation here. Let's talk about what happened inside the cage first. And let's talk about what happened outside the cage after. The performance from Charles Radtke, the finish, the left hook, it was a thing of beauty, really. It was a kind of a shot that was being set up all fight. Urbina was doing well to kind of feint, attack, feint, but the problem is when you continue to do that, you can get caught in between feints in the counter, and that's what Charles Radtke really did here to Urbina, and it was a wonderful knockout. What did you think of the performance overall before the knockout, Harry?
He looked good. He
Yeah.
looked good. Look, I mean, it's one of those where he's not fighting elite level competition, right? But he went out and did exactly what he needed to do. He went out and he got a finish in round one, and you literally cannot ask for any more than that. Nothing. He pushed the pace the entire time. He was on the front foot the entire time. He was landing impactful shots the entire time. I actually thought he was going to finish Urbina the first time he dropped him, but fair play to him. He didn't waste his gas tank. He recognized that Urbina was still in the fight. He recognized that there could be potentially another sort of 12 minutes of fighting to go. And so he allowed the finish to come to him. And that's a smart fighter, right? We know, and we have seen ad nauseum before, fighters drop their opponent and then they rush the finish and it doesn't happen. And then, they're in a slightly different, more difficult position. But Radtke did a really, really good job of finding exactly the same shot, setting it up really nicely. And when it did land, man, it just folded Urbina in half.
It was like one of those left hooks where like there wasn't even that much hip movement in. It was more like arm shoulder, but it was timed so well. Like, I mean, a sweet hook, left hook landing like that is one of the best things that you can watch. And obviously the reaction from Urbina, it hit him right on the button, and look, he got the job done. Goes backstage and kind of calls out the media, saying that he's not getting paid for being interviewed, saying that, suggesting maybe he should be paid for his time talking to the media, completely oblivious to the fact that when you sign your contract with the UFC, that includes media obligations that you have. And I think that man needs a crash course in what media is, what journalism is in mixed martial arts, and how it should be used, because he didn't use it that smartly, Harry. I was outspoken about it on the big podcast. I was outspoken about it on Twitter today, and I'm curious to hear what you think of all of that kind of setup.
Yeah, so when you get to the point of asking me who I want next for Charles Radtke, I was going to say media training.
Yeah.
Because, look, I understand, because what really Charles Radtke is saying here, right, is I've had a hard camp. I've had a hard lead up to the fight. I've done fight week. Maybe the weight cut sucked, whatever it is. He's gone in, he's got his win, and he doesn't feel like he's being compensated enough for his performance. This isn't really him saying, I don't want to sit here and answer questions for free. If it is, he's a scumbag. If it's not, then what I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt of is he is inadvertently and incorrectly coming out and expressing that he's not getting paid enough. And you know what? He's probably right. He probably is getting paid, isn't getting paid enough.
For sure.
The way that you do that is not by leveling criticism at the media. It's by getting the media on side, because if you get the media on side, they are your best friends. You'll never be short of an interview. You'll never be short of a page column. You'll never be short of, airtime when you come to press conferences. As and when, if he climbs enough that, on a fight week, there's a big press conference, he'll be there. He'll have questions. Journalists will take interest in him and in his story. And what will that do? It will bring eyes to him. What will that do? Eventually bring dollars to him. And so for his next opponent, media training.
100%. It's like, use the time that you have in that space to tell your story. It was clear that he was pissed off, but the direction of that kind of anger, like you said, was directed towards the media. Tell us your story. Why are you angry? What have you sacrificed
to tell it for you?
Yeah. You speak it, we'll talk about it after the fact. Instead, we're kind of talking about him being a bit of a dick. He should be Charles Radtke. That should be his name, not Radtke. But look, it is what it is. I mean, it can't go without being saying that he used a really bad homophobic slur in his post-fight interview in Australia as well. Not having a good time when the microphone is on his hands for Radtke. And I think he thinks he's something that he's not right now. Let's put him up there with a good guy with a known name and see, if we can kind of get on side a little bit. But for now, I wouldn't even have any interest. And all the credit in the world and not to even disparage the guy who did ask him questions, because he would have asked questions not knowing what responses were coming, but credit to the media that were in the room that didn't bother asking him any other questions, and that's it. That's what happens. You reap what you sow sometimes. But we shall move on. Women's who's it?
Mike Malott.
Mike Malott. Give it to him. I love it. Great. But good old Canada versus USA battle. Mr. Nice Guy versus Mr. Not So Nice Guy, if you want to label it that way. Women's 115-pound division, Molly McCann looked to step back in there against Diana Belbita. After that loss to Julia Storyalenko, we'll talk about it a little bit later on. I think we can give ourselves a pat on the back about this one, Harry. We kind of called this one perfectly on the setup last week. You cited the fact that she went and competed in Polaris, went and really kind of concentrated on her grappling, on her jiu-jitsu after losing by an armbar in her last fight. Molly McCann goes out there and she secures an armbar of her own against Diana Belbita. And it was a good performance. And, I think this is the type, like I said, this is the type of Molly McCann that we need in the UFC. She apologized to herself, to her fans, maybe for not making the level of commitment that she should. And I think when she can fight at that level of capability with her head firmly attached to her shoulders, thinking straightly, dedicating her time to mixed martial arts, she can be a problem here at 115. And she showcased just that against Belbita. She was the focus of your Severe Spotlight this week. You can catch that at SevereMMA.com each and every Monday. A brilliant article breaking down a performance and fight of Harry's choosing from a weekend. Like I said, it was Molly McCann. I'll just give you a moment, Harry, to explain why you chose Molly McCann for the Severe Spotlight this week and what you thought of your performance.
So it was between Randy Brown and Molly McCann, but I think the Molly McCann story just has more intriguing variables to me. Like, Molly is somebody that is obviously a cult hero in her home city of Liverpool and frankly all over the UK. But, she is somebody that has been very outspoken about who she is, has been very outspoken about where she comes from. And she really, really wears that as a badge of honor when she goes and fights in the cage. She held up the Irish flag for Ryan Curtis and everything that he's been going through. And I think that really shows you what type of human she is, right? Now, the performance in and of itself, she looked quick. She looked lean. She looked strong. I was impressed with how she was changing stances. It felt as though there was a minute-by-minute game plan in that fight. The first minute was start fast, start hard, and make sure that Belbita knew that she was in a fight. The second minute was to start switching stances and really start to mix up everything on the feet. The third minute was take her down and let's finish her. And it just felt like that immediately. It feels like there's a new air of confidence to Molly McCann. It feels like when she was in there on that night, she knew that she was the better fighter. And that's not something that we have felt from Molly McCann in many, many, many of her UFC performances. It's felt as though coming in here, she has added and well-rounded and chiseled out some of the holes that she had in her game. Now, look, the takedown in and of itself wasn't beautiful, right? It wasn't perfect, but she got the takedown. She was confident enough to shoot. She was confident enough to withdraw from the initial grappling exchange because she didn't feel confident enough. The second takedown was much cleaner. It was much more beautiful. And then when she got onto that takedown, the pass was lovely. She gets to mount. And then she just brutalizes Belbita, brutalizes her. Elbows, hammer fists, strikes, and then eventually locks up that S-mount armbar and definitely breaks Belbita's arm, by the way. There is definitely a break happening there. It might not be like a full disastrous whatever, but the angle with which Belbita's elbow was facing at the end of that fight is not the way that a natural arm elbow is supposed to be looking. Now, I think, to your point, I don't know how tough of a cut 115 is for Molly McCann, but it certainly feels as though that is the weight class that she is going to succeed in going forward. If you would like me to run immediately into names, I have two. The first one is the Gillian Robertson rematch. That is a fight of now almost 5 years ago, right? So that's the first thing. That I think is a really, really good test for Molly McCann. Gillian Robertson, we've been saying for 5 fucking years, this is what she does. She's not great on the feet. If she gets on top of you, she's a savage. If she doesn't, she loses the fight, right? And so I think for Molly McCann, that's a great test for her newly found skill set. Or if we're not doing Molly McCann, how about, and this is a harsh one, maybe I shouldn't be throwing this in, but if you want a name for Molly McCann, Michelle Waterson-Gomez.
I don't mind that one
Four-fight
at
losing
all.
streak.
Yeah.
4-fight losing streak. But the next time you come back to England, if you want to do a Molly McCann, Michelle Waterson-Gomez just under the co-main event, that'll bring some eyes in, and that's
Definitely would. Definitely would. Yeah, very interested in those fights, and fair play to Molly getting back on the win column. Proving that dedication to the game as well by not shying away from the gaps that probably existed in her grappling, getting stuck in on this camp and showing those improvements. And hopefully we'll see her continue those improvements throughout that next run or next time she is out there, whoever that may be against. Our guy, Charles Johnson, and we can run through the rest of these ones relatively quick, Harry. Charles Johnson took out a 17 or 16-0, or no, 17-0 Askat Maksum by unanimous decision. Typical Charles Johnson performance here. I mean, he's not an easy guy. I think he proved that on Saturday night. Got off to a slow start, but he used that octagon experience quite well in the later stages of the fight.
Just a fantastic fight altogether. Fantastic fight altogether. Maksum, that's the first time he's felt that UFC level, I think. And it will be a wake-up call. It is definitely going to be something that will prove him very, very, very well in the future. That first loss is always demonstrable for most fighters. Don't be surprised if the next time... Oh, I'm going to butcher his name. Hold on, let me just practice it. Askat Maksum. Next time Askat Maksum fights, you may well see him as the severe spotlight, because you look at him fight, the way he was fighting, there's something about him, right? There's something about him. There's a quality there to him. And that first loss, specifically the first loss in the UFC, really, really does something to a fighter. And don't be surprised if he comes out and absolutely mauls the next guy.
Yeah, picked up a good win on his UFC debut against Tyson Nam. Obviously, Charles Johnson, we've talked about Charles Johnson time and time again. Just a difficult guy to go in there and get a result against. And that's exactly what happened really last Saturday night. Johnson went on, took the decision. And I hope his wife enjoyed watching that from the comfort of her home, because she couldn't get a ticket to the Apex to watch it live. What do you want next for Charles Johnson?
How about... Hear me out. Tatsuto Taira.
Oh, yes. Give me all of that. Give me all of that. Perfect test. I think, Tatsura is kind of broken into the rankings, but I'm not in any mad rush to see him fight above. I think he can still kind of maintain that position. It's cool that Jets, he's 23 years of age. Charles Johnson is a perfect fight and a perfect test for a guy like Tatsura Taira. That's an excellent call there. Excellent call. Moving on to the 175 division, Themba Gorimbo took out Pete Rodriguez by first round, just over 30 seconds. Monstrous overhand right into a ground and pound. And he kicked off all the boxes. He had a lot of hype coming in here. Obviously, his correlation and his affiliation with The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, him buying the house, him, sending all of his earnings back to his home village in Africa to help out his family, help out his community. Just a real good guy overall. Went out there and got the job done. I mean, you can be a nice guy. Sometimes nice guys finish last in mixed martial arts, but he's doing his best to keep that star power alive, and he performed quite well in this fight too, Harry, didn't he?
He did. And at 33, it needs to be now. Mm-hmm. He's definitely not going to be winning the title, which is what he says he's going to be doing. There's fucking no chance in hell of that happening. But we can have some fun, because the thing is with Gorimbo, he's fucking quick. He is so fast. That jab is so fast. He's clearly an A-grade athlete. He has an amazing story, an absolutely amazing story. And so why not allow him to squeeze the juice from that story to its absolute fullest? And so Alex Morono.
Boom. There you go. Love it. Great test for him. And we'll see what happens with him. I gotta stop here. Jung Young Lee, excuse me. He really impressed me. This is a guy coming off the road to the UFC. We've seen that series. It was happening this weekend as well. We're seeing some pretty tasty fighters coming off this road to the UFC, Harry. And I think Young Lee is one of those. And it was a good win against a difficult opponent in Blake Bilder on Saturday night in the 145-pound division.
Couldn't agree more. Very, very, very impressed. Blake Bilder hurt a number of times. Very, very tough. Very tough. Managed to stick in and around there. No problem whatsoever with Jung Young Lee's performance. I really, really enjoyed it. We're gonna have some fun with him, I think.
100%, I agree. Anyone that kind of sticks out at 145, Paul Hughes, perhaps? We send Paul Hughes in against him?
I mean, sure. If not,
we want him to lose, maybe we will.
David Onama.
Yes, there you go. On fire. Love it, young Powell. Early prelims review here. I'll just run through them really quickly to get us finished off. Luana Carolina took out Julia Storyalenko. We talked about her. She picked up a win against Molly McCann in her last fight. Tried the same game plan here against Carolina. Went in there, tried to take the fight down. Came close with a couple of armbar attempts, but Carolina was just that savvy to kind of keep out of it. And the writing was on the wall for Storyalenko. She kind of faded as the fight went on, couldn't get the takedown, couldn't get top control. And it was actually Carolina that finished in top control. And the finish came with 8 seconds left on the clock. And there's nothing more that I love seeing it than a fighter with 8 seconds left, giving it all, trying to finish the fight. And she got her just reward by getting the finish. And she moves on in the women's 125-pound division. After that, we had Marquel Medeiros versus Landon Quinones. 2 well-matched guys, but middle-of-the-road guys here. Medeiros looking quite good. He came off the Ultimate Fighter. I think he was on Conor McGregor's team. Good win against Landon Quinones. I mean, coming in here for your UFC debut, picking up that win against Quinones, who is a guy that has fought a couple of times in the UFC. Good win overall. Doubt we'll see either one of these guys make a huge leap in the 155-pound division. First fight on the card, Harry, was a heavyweight match between Jamel Pogues and Thomas Peterson. I mean, not great. This was not great. Pogues did well to get the job done, but Thomas Peterson, to me, with all due respect, is not UFC quality. I think he's going to have a tough time inside the octagon. And similar enough to the last fight, neither one of these guys are going to make a great jump up the rankings in the heavyweight division in the UFC, in my humble opinion. That clears the deck for us for UFC Vegas 85. A 5.3 card from Mr. Powell. It'll be interesting to see what we can muster up for next week's Apex card. Not looking great on paper, let's be real. We'll discuss a couple of fights on the Severe setup, obviously, this week later on. But for now, that was the balance breakdown. That was Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell. Head over, check him out. Check the Severe Spotlight out at O'Neill MMA is where you'll see all of my stuff that's going on. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll talk to you the next time.